From a real corpse used on set to a line that was completely improvised and became the most quoted moment in cinema history, James Cameron's Titanic isn't just a love story. It's a time capsule of obsessive detail, hidden Easter eggs, and production secrets that took 27 years for people to notice. Some of these details cost millions of dollars. Others were pure accidents that made the final cut. And a few, they were hiding in plain sight the entire time, just waiting for someone to pause at exactly the right frame. These are 21 hidden details you completely missed in Titanic. If this is the kind of content you love, hit subscribe. I break down cinema secrets every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Number 21. The clock in the opening scene shows the exact time the ship sank. When old Rose begins telling her story to Brock Lovett and his crew in that cramped research vessel, there's a clock visible on the wall behind her. If you look closely, the time reads 2:20 a.m. Most people watching this scene are focused on Gloria Stewart's performance or the grainy footage of the shipwreck playing on the monitors. But Cameron placed that clock there for a reason. The RMS Titanic sank at exactly 2:20 in the morning on April 15th, 1912. That single prop is Cameron's way of telling you from frame one that every detail in this film has been researched, verified, and placed with surgical precision. It's the kind of touch most viewers breeze right past. But once you know it's there, you can't unsee the intention behind every frame. Cameron didn't make a romance that happened to be set on the Titanic. He made a historical reconstruction that happens to contain one of cinema's greatest love stories. Number 20. The movie's runtime matches the actual sinking in real time. Titanic has a runtime of 2 hours and 40 minutes. From the moment the ship strikes the iceberg to the moment it fully disappears beneath the ocean's surface in the film, approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes pass in real time. This wasn't an accident. Cameron structured the film's second half to mirror the catastrophe as it actually unfolded, minute by agonizing minute, so audiences would feel the same mounting dread that passengers experienced. Survivors described those hours as simultaneously endless and impossibly fast, time stretching and compressing as panic set in. Cameron wanted you to live through that. The clock wasn't just ticking on screen. It was ticking in the theater. That sense of inevitable doom you felt watching the ship break apart, knowing you still had an hour left in your seat, that was by design. Cameron weaponized runtime itself to make you feel trapped alongside 1,500 people who knew they were about to die. Number 19. Jack's sketch of Rose was actually drawn by James Cameron. The famous drawing of Rose wearing nothing but the heart of the ocean, reclining on that couch with her hair pinned up and her eyes daring Jack to capture her exactly as she is, wasn't created by Leonardo DiCaprio. It was drawn by director James Cameron himself. If you watch the scene closely, paying attention to the hands moving across the paper rather than the romantic tension filling the room, you'll notice the hands don't match DiCaprio's hands. They're rougher, older, more controlled. They're Cameron's. He's left-handed, and he spent hours before filming practicing that exact sketch over and over, trying dozens of variations until he got the line quality, the shading, and the pose exactly right. He wanted it to look like something a talented young artist would draw in the moment, raw and immediate, but also technically skilled enough to justify Rose's reaction. That drawing later sold at auction for $16,000. It remains one of the most iconic props in film history, and every line on that paper came from the same man who engineered every frame of the movie around it. Number 18. Gloria Stewart, who played Old Rose, was the only person on set who was actually alive when the Titanic sank. Stewart was born in 1910, 2 years before the disaster. While she wasn't old enough to remember the news when it broke, she lived through the era when Titanic was still a fresh wound in public consciousness, when survivors were still giving interviews, and the world was still processing the scale of the loss. Cameron cast her specifically because he wanted that generational authenticity. He needed someone who could embody the weight of carrying a secret for 84 years, and Stewart brought something to the role that no amount of acting technique could replicate. Her performance carries the knowledge of an entire century. She was a living bridge between the world of 1912 and 1997, and her presence on set gave the entire production a haunting sense of historical legitimacy. When she speaks in the film, you're not just hearing an actress deliver lines, you're hearing someone who existed in the same world as the real passengers, even if only for a brief overlap. Number 17. The film's budget exceeded the actual cost of building the Titanic. Adjusting for inflation, the RMS Titanic cost approximately $7.5 million to build in 1912. Cameron's film cost over $200 million to produce, making it the most expensive movie ever made at the time. Studio executives at Fox were convinced it would be a financial disaster. They watched the budget spiral out of control, watched Cameron demand take after take in freezing water, watched him build full-scale sets that would be used for minutes of screen time and then destroyed forever. They wanted to fire him midway through production. There were serious conversations about shutting the whole thing down and writing off the loss. But Cameron kept pushing, kept spending, kept insisting that anything less than perfection would dishonor the 1,500 people who died. The studio thought he was insane. Then the film opened. It went on to gross over $2.2 billion worldwide, held the title of highest-grossing movie of all time for 12 years, and won 11 Academy Awards. Cameron vindicated every insane decision, and then 12 years later, he beat his own record with Avatar. The man who almost got fired for spending too much money on Titanic became the only director in history to make 2 of the 3 highest-grossing films ever made. Number 16. The band really did play as the ship sank, and their final song is historically accurate. In the film, as passengers scramble for lifeboats and officers fire warning shots into the air and the deck starts tilting at impossible angles, the ship's band continues playing. Their final song is "Nearer, My God, to Thee," a hymn associated with death and funerals, a song you sing when you know the end is coming. This isn't Hollywood sentimentality. Survivor accounts confirm that the band, led by bandmaster Wallace Hartley, kept playing to calm passengers even as the ship went down. All 8 musicians perished. Hartley's body was later recovered from the North Atlantic with his violin case strapped to his chest, still protecting the instrument he played until the water took him. Cameron didn't sentimentalize this moment. He didn't add dramatic close-ups or emotional swells. He presented it exactly as it happened, a quiet act of grace and professionalism, in the middle of unimaginable chaos. Those men chose to die doing their jobs, giving people something beautiful to hold on to in their final moments. Cameron honored that by refusing to turn it into melodrama. Number 15. The elderly couple lying in bed as water floods their room were real Titanic passengers. Isidore and Ida Strauss, co-owners of Macy's department store, were aboard the Titanic traveling first class. When the ship began sinking and crew members started loading lifeboats, Isidore was offered a spot because of his age and wealth. He refused, saying he wouldn't board a lifeboat before younger men and women. Ida was offered a seat. She refused to leave without her husband. Witnesses reported seeing them return to their cabin, lying down together in their bed, fully clothed, holding each other as water rose around them. They chose to die together rather than live apart. Cameron recreated this moment in the film with heartbreaking accuracy. That brief scene, maybe 5 seconds of screen time, no dialogue, just 2 people holding hands as the world ends, honors a love story that deserves to be remembered as much as Jack and Rose. It's a reminder that Titanic isn't just a fictional romance. It's built on top of 1,500 real deaths, and some of those deaths were acts of love as powerful as anything Cameron wrote. Number 14. There's a deleted scene that explains why Jack was in Europe. In the final cut, Jack mentions winning his Titanic ticket in a poker game in Southampton, but we never learn what he was doing in Europe in the first place or how a penniless American artist ended up gambling for transatlantic passage. A deleted scene reveals that Jack had been traveling through Paris for months, working as a street artist on the left bank, sketching portraits of tourists for a few francs, sleeping in cheap boarding houses, and living the bohemian lifestyle he describes to Rose at dinner. He painted, he drew, he survived on wine, bread, and the thrill of waking up not knowing what the day would bring. The scene shows him in a Parisian cafe, laughing with other artists, completely comfortable with having no money and no plan. Cameron cut the scene because it slowed the pacing of the opening, but it adds crucial context to Jack's character. It explains his ease with poverty, his artist's eye for beauty, his philosophy that life is about the moments you collect, not the things you own. Without that scene, Jack feels like a fantasy. With it, he feels like someone who actually existed in 1912, a young man shaped by the world he moved through. Number 13. The water in the sinking scenes was heated, but only for the actors with speaking roles. To save money and speed up production, only the main cast members had access to heated water during the extensive flooding sequences. Background extras, the hundreds of people you see scrambling across tilting decks and clinging to railings and floating in the ocean, were submerged in freezing water pulled directly from the Pacific, sometimes for hours at a time. The temperature hovered around 50 degrees. Several extras developed hypothermia and had to be pulled from the water and treated by medics on set. One extra even threatened to sue the production, claiming the conditions were inhumane and violated safety standards. Cameron later admitted in interviews that this was one of his biggest regrets from the production, calling it a failure of duty of care. He said he was so focused on capturing the horror of the real disaster that he lost sight of the real people suffering in front of him. The agony you see on screen during the sinking, the terror in people's faces, the desperation in their movements, a lot of that wasn't acting. It was real suffering, real cold, real fear. Cameron got the authenticity he wanted, but the cost was higher than he intended. Number 12. Kate Winslet got pneumonia twice during filming. Winslet spent so much time submerged in cold water, both in the tank and in the ocean sequences, that she developed pneumonia during production. She took antibiotics, recovered enough to keep working, and then got pneumonia again a few weeks later from continued exposure. She refused to wear a wetsuit under her costume because she believed it would affect her movement and make her performance feel less authentic. She wanted to feel what Rose felt, the cold seeping into her bones, the heaviness of wet fabric pulling her down, the exhaustion of fighting to stay afloat. In the scene where Rose is submerged in freezing water searching for Jack with the axe, calling his name through chattering teeth, Winslet was genuinely struggling. Her gasping breaths, the way her whole body shakes, the desperation in her voice, all of it is real. She later said in interviews that she vowed never to work with Cameron again, calling him a perfectionist to the point of cruelty, someone who prioritized the film over the well-being of his actors. Years later, she softened that stance and reunited with him for Avatar, The Way of Water. But during Titanic, she was pushed to the edge of what a human body can endure, and the performance we see on screen was born from that suffering. Number 11. The famous line, "I'm the king of the world," was completely improvised. Cameron didn't write that line. He told DiCaprio to climb up to the bow of the ship, stand at the very front with the wind in his face, and do something, anything, that felt like pure joy and freedom, like a young man with his whole life ahead of him and no idea what's coming. DiCaprio climbed up, threw his arms out wide like wings, and shouted, "I'm the king of the world," off the top of his head. It was the first thing that came to him, a spontaneous expression of that exact feeling Cameron wanted to capture. Cameron loved it so much, he kept it in the film without changing a word. That moment became one of the most quoted lines in cinema history, parodied and referenced in everything from commercials to award show speeches. It's been said 1,000,000 times by 1,000,000 people, and it happened because DiCaprio was told to play and trust his instincts. It's a reminder that sometimes the best creative choices aren't the result of careful planning or multiple drafts. They're discovered in the moment when an actor stops thinking and just feels. Number 10. Rose's spit was actually James Cameron's spit. In the scene where Jack teaches Rose how to spit like a man, standing at the railing and launching a perfect arc of saliva into the ocean below, the camera cuts to a close-up of spit hitting the wood deck. That spit didn't come from Kate Winslet. It came from James Cameron, who was standing just off camera with a mouthful of water, waiting for the exact right moment in the shot. When Winslet leaned over the railing and mimed spitting, Cameron spit at precisely the right angle and timing to make it look like it came from her. Winslet had tried multiple takes, but couldn't produce enough spit on cue to make it red on camera. So Cameron, ever the problem solver, stepped in and did it himself. It's a ridiculous, completely invisible detail that no one in the audience would ever notice or care about, but it shows the level of control and obsession Cameron demanded over every single element of his film. If the spit didn't look right, he'd do the spit himself. Nothing was too small. Nothing was left to chance. Number 9. One of the dead bodies floating in the water was a real human corpse. During the harrowing sequence where Rose and Jack navigate through a sea of frozen corpses floating in the North Atlantic, one of those bodies wasn't a prop or a mannequin. It was an actual cadaver, provided by a medical school for the sake of anatomical accuracy. Cameron wanted the scene to feel as disturbing and real as possible, and he believed that a real human body would photograph differently than even the most convincing dummy. The way light hits skin, the way limbs float, the subtle details of a face in death, all of it registers differently on film. Cameron thought audiences would feel that difference on a subconscious level, even if they couldn't articulate why. The crew wasn't told which body was real, which only added to the unease and tension on set. People were moving through freezing water surrounded by what they thought were props, never knowing which one was human. This detail didn't surface publicly until years after the film's release, when a crew member mentioned it in an interview. It remains one of the most controversial and ethically questionable decisions Cameron made during production, a choice that prioritized authenticity over almost everything else. Number 8. The Heart of the Ocean was inspired by the Hope Diamond. While the necklace in the film is entirely fictional, created by Cameron and the prop department, it was directly modeled after the Hope Diamond, one of the most famous and cursed gemstones in history. The Hope Diamond is a massive blue diamond that has passed through the hands of French royalty, Russian aristocrats, wealthy American socialites, and collectors for centuries. According to legend, everyone who owned it suffered misfortune. Marie Antoinette wore it before being executed. Other owners faced bankruptcy, madness, and early death. The diamond eventually ended up in the Smithsonian, where it remains today behind thick glass, still carrying its dark reputation. Cameron borrowed this mythology of cursed wealth and doomed glamour to to give the heart of the ocean a sense of weight beyond its monetary value. When Rose throws the necklace into the ocean at the end of the film, she's not just getting rid of jewelry, she's letting go of a past weighed down by tragedy, greed, and the burden of surviving when so many others didn't. That blue stone sinking into the black water is Cameron's way of saying some things are too heavy to carry, no matter how beautiful they are. Number 7. The movie has no opening credits. Titanic begins with James Horner's haunting score over underwater footage of the shipwreck, robots gliding through the debris field, metal staircases collapsed and covered in rust, then dives straight into the treasure hunt without a single opening credit. Not the studio logo, not the director's name, not the stars. All credits appear at the end after the story is over. Cameron made this choice to immerse audiences immediately, stripping away the barrier between viewer and story. He didn't want you thinking about actors or production companies. He wanted you thinking about the ship, the mystery, the 1,500 lives lost in that wreckage. It was a risky move, especially for a film with A-list stars whose names were supposed to sell tickets. By the time you realize you haven't seen anyone's name on screen, you're already 40 minutes into the movie, already invested in Rose's story, already hooked. The absence of credits becomes invisible. You're just there, exactly where Cameron wanted you. Number 6. Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't the first choice for Jack Dawson. Matthew McConaughey, Chris O'Donnell, and even Tom Cruise were all seriously considered for the role. Cameron initially wanted someone older, with more traditional masculinity and leading man presence. But then DiCaprio came in to audition. He brought vulnerability, boyish charm, and anarchic energy that made Jack feel less like a romantic archetype and more like a real person you could meet on a train or in a bar. Cameron watched the audition tape and realized he'd been wrong. Jack wasn't supposed to be larger than life. He was supposed to be accessible, the kind of guy a sheltered rich girl would fall for, precisely because he wasn't trying to impress anyone. Cameron later said casting DiCaprio was one of the best decisions he ever made. DiCaprio's performance turned him into a global superstar overnight and cemented Jack Dawson as one of the most beloved characters in film history. Number 5. The film's most emotional line was written the night before shooting. When Rose clings to Jack's frozen body in the water, promising, "I'll never let go, Jack. I'll never let go." That line wasn't in the original script. Cameron wrote it the night before filming because he felt the moment needed a verbal promise to match the emotional weight. He scribbled it down, brought it to set the next morning, and handed it to Kate Winslet right before they started shooting. She read it once, nodded, and performed it on the first take while floating in near-freezing water, her voice shaking with cold and exhaustion. Cameron watched the playback and knew immediately he had it. He kept that first take. The raw emotion you hear isn't the result of rehearsal or multiple attempts. It's a woman on the verge of hypothermia, physically shutting down, delivering a line she'd only just learned. Number 4. The grand staircase was a full-scale replica built from the original blueprints, and it was destroyed only once. Cameron's production team spent months building an exact replica of the Titanic's famous grand staircase, complete with carved wood paneling, ornate clock, glass dome ceiling, and every detail down to the carpet pattern. The flooding scene where thousands of gallons of water crash through the glass dome and obliterate this beautiful space was shot in one take. Once the set was destroyed, it was gone forever. No backup, no second chance. The crew had one opportunity to capture the chaos and the complete disintegration of this symbol of wealth. The tension on set that day was suffocating. Cast and crew stood watching monitors, holding their breath. Cameron called action. The water came. The staircase shattered and collapsed under the flood in real time. When Cameron yelled cut, there was dead silence. Then the entire set erupted in applause. That scene remains one of the most visually stunning and technically difficult sequences ever filmed. Number 3. The photo of Jack at the end is actually a photo of James Cameron from his youth. In the final moments of the film, the camera slowly pans across Rose's bedside photos, documenting her long and adventurous life after Titanic. There are photos of her riding horses, flying planes, standing in front of monuments, all the things Jack told her to do. One of those photos shows a young man on horseback, meant to represent Jack. That photo isn't of Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a photo of James Cameron from his younger years riding horses in Canada. Cameron inserted himself into Rose's life as a quiet Easter egg, a personal signature hidden where only obsessive viewers would find it. Most people assume it's stock footage or a stand-in actor, but it's Cameron, literally writing himself into the story he created. Number 2. Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio never had a romantic relationship off-screen. Despite their electric chemistry and persistent rumors, Winslet and DiCaprio have always maintained they are close friends and nothing more. In interviews, they've described each other as soulmates in a platonic sense, bonded by the intensity of making Titanic together. They went through hell on that set. They suffered together, supported each other through Cameron's relentless demands, and came out the other side with a connection that doesn't fit neatly into romantic or professional categories. That bond is visible on screen. The intimacy between Jack and Rose feels genuine because the foundation underneath it was real friendship and real trust. Their relationship is a testament that great on-screen chemistry doesn't require off-screen romance. Sometimes friendship creates something even deeper and more lasting. Number 1. There was actually enough room for Jack on that door. This is the detail fans have argued about for nearly 3 decades. After the Titanic sinks and Rose climbs onto a piece of floating debris, a door or wall panel torn from the ship, Jack stays in the freezing water holding onto the edge. He doesn't try to climb on. He just holds her hand, tells her she's going to survive, makes her promise to die an old woman warm in her bed, and then he freezes to death while she lives. The internet exploded with debates, scientific analyses, even full-scale experiments trying to determine whether the door was physically large enough to support both their weights. In 2012, during the film's 3D re-release, Cameron finally addressed it in interviews. He admitted the door probably could have supported both their weights if they had carefully balanced their positions. But he went on to explain that Jack's death was never about the physics of the door. It was about his character. Jack spent the entire film making sure Rose survived, and his final act was no different. He didn't try to climb on because he knew any attempt might risk her life. It wasn't about whether there was room. It was about sacrifice, about love expressed through the decision to let go. And that's why the scene breaks hearts every single time. So there you have it, 21 details hiding in the most iconic romance ever filmed. From real corpses to improvised lines, from historical accuracy obsessively researched to directorial Easter eggs planted for fans who would watch the film 100 times, Titanic is a movie built on impossible ambition and relentless craft. Every frame carries intention. Every choice costs something, and now you'll never watch it the same way again. If you loved this breakdown, the video on your screen dives into even more secrets from classic films you thought you knew. Click it now, and I'll see you in the next one.